Hello, everybody. So, a couple of fascinating talks just then on content. It's really interesting. I'm going to change tack and talk about, I think, what lies behind the content, which, for me and for Publons is the peer review process. Before I get into that, a little bit about Publons. So, Darrell mentioned I'm managing director. I started the company with my co-founder, Daniel Johnston, about 4.5 years ago or so. We started in New Zealand, really with the idea that peer review is kind of central to what we do as researchers. And it just like sharing, it hasn't really changed to meet the modern world or the way of doing things. We've built it out since then and kind of made a lot of progress to the point where I'll get into some of the stats, but very recently we actually sold the business to Clarivate Analytics. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. Really try to talk about some of the new things that are going on with Publons in the spirit of the session. So yeah, fundamental belief for Publons. Peer review is at the heart of the research that we do. As researchers, as publishers, as funders, the thing that we all rely on is the peer review process. Without that, we'd be in a very different business. But it is facing all sorts of issues. So the issues I'm thinking of today all relate to the problems that come from the massive need to publish as a researcher, the need to get your content out there, and then also the relative lack of incentive that comes from peer reviewing. So you have these two kind of odd forces where authors are desperate to publish, reviewers don't really have much incentive to review, and we're seeing all sorts of emergent problems in peer review. So obviously it's getting harder and harder to find reviewers. Reviewer uptake rates are decreasing every year, and that's leading to a slower review process. Of course, at the same time, we're seeing various issues to do with our ability to trust what's going on in the peer review process. Our mission is to partner to help solve these problems, partner with publishers to help solve these problems. We believe that if we put the proper attention into peer review that it requires, that we'll be able to speed up all of the research process. And I've put here 4 steps that we think we need to take to really speed up the process. So the first thing is peer review really needs to become a rewarding activity. Just like publishing research is good for your career, being a peer reviewer should be good for your career. Number 2, I think it's relatively well known that the way we find reviewers now is fairly constrained. We basically look for corresponding authors on research articles. That's the best method we have. That results in, I think, some bias in who we select to review and a relatively constrained and small pool of reviewers. And looking at that problem, we think there are some ways to both expand the pool of reviewers that we're tapping into, but also improve the way that they do review. Third, on top of that, I think a key fundamental tenet for Publons is that we always talk, when we talk about peer review, we talk about the importance of the reviewer, we talk about what authors want. But I think one thing we've kind of learned over the last 4 or 5 years is that editors are really at the heart of the peer review process. They are the people that manage the communities, that find the reviewers, that get review done. And so a big thing for us is providing tools and information to editors to help them to manage that process. And then finally, tools and services and recognition and these sorts of things are only so useful if they're happening at a scale that is impacting the entire research ecosystem. It's no good doing this for 2 journals. You need to be doing it for 2,000 journals. So a few things that you may know of that Publons has done. First of all, tied to the first problem, we offer a recognition service. So we make it very easy for reviewers to get recognition on Publons. We have an academy where we train reviewers, particularly reviewers who aren't necessarily being asked to review now, giving them a way to get in front of editors and become reviewers. And then third, we offer a dashboard that is available to any editor for any journal that partners with us and provides all sorts of insights and information about the reviewers that are partaking in the peer review process for that journal. And then fourth, the scale thing. So I mentioned that we've recently been acquired by Clarivate Analytics. I think the key thing for Publons is that what we're doing is a publisher-neutral endeavor. You know, we have reviewers from around the world, from all of the journals around the world using our platform. And so a big thing for us when we began talking with Clarivate Analytics was the ability to become a publisher-neutral resource for the community. That, combined with the scale of Clarivate Analytics, made us really excited about the possibility of bringing peer review to a large scale. And I'll talk about some of the things coming up that I think we can do as a result. First of all, where are we today? So about 200,000 researchers are using Publons now. Together they've added well over 1 million reviews now from basically every journal in the world. And that's growing faster and faster every day. Why are researchers doing this? Well, basically, when you add a review to Publons, we turn it into what we call a measurable research output. So it's something that you can actually take and use in your funding application, in your annual performance review, all of these things. It turns peer review into something that is from something that is a chore into something that's actually good for your career. I think this is really important because reviewers, as I've said, are at the heart of every community, editors and reviewers. There are authors, there are readers, there are editors. They're the people that improve the quality of published paper and allow us to trust published research. So we really believe in finding ways to engage and improve the interaction that we have with reviewers. One of the things we do is we provide a way of integrating with journals. So I think now 1,400 or 1,500 journals use Publons. What we do is we integrate automatically into the editorial management system and behind the scenes verify the peer review that's going on. So bringing some trust and some transparency to the peer review process. And of course, we do this all in a way that is providing a service for the reviewer, but is using the publisher's branding. So it's all about helping a publisher or an editor to build a stronger relationship with the reviewer. And this seems to work. What we found over many years now and many studies is that when reviewers are getting recognition through a system like this, and you talk to them, they are more likely to want to review in the future, and actually they're more likely to consider submitting for a journal that's offering recognition for review as well. It's pretty powerful stuff. So that's kind of what Publons has done to this point. I want to talk now about two things that we've got kind of in the pipeline that I think are really interesting. First one is about scale and diving into the data. One of the things we don't really know now is who is actually doing the peer review, who is contributing to the peer review process. One of the things we've just released is what we call the Review Distribution Index. It's a measure for the workload that's happening around in various peer review communities. So it's modeled on the Gini coefficient, which is used to measure income distributions around the world. We've applied it to peer review. And it's generating some really interesting results based on the corpus of data that we have. So as an example, if you look at, well, I should say, the Gini coefficient kind of that I'm showing here, the higher the number, the more inequality there is. So the more some small fraction of reviewers are doing all of the review. The lower the number, the more kind of distributed the review process is. So if you look at the corpus of reviews on Publons and you break it down in various ways, by journal, by demographic, by research field, we start to see all sorts of interesting things. But one thing I wanted to show you today is we found that in biomedical fields, the review kind of distribution seems to be a lot more flat. Reviewers seem to be doing a more even share of the work than they are in other fields. It's an interesting result that's just kind of appeared out of the data. There's plenty more like this behind the scenes, and we have a blog post up kind of beginning to talk about this, and I think there will be some more things coming out of this, and I think it's very interesting and worth taking a read if you're interested in what peer reviewers are doing and the way the ecosystem is working. Second thing I wanted to talk about is new ways to find, to screen, to contact reviewers. So I mentioned that Publons is now partnered with Clarivate Analytics. What happens when you take the world's preeminent citation database and the world's largest database of peer reviews? It's a very comprehensive researcher database, and it's a very complete picture of what researchers are doing. You know, it's a picture of peer review, of research, publications, and that together is a very interesting way of starting to suggest potential reviewers. So I wanted to give a sneak peek of something we've been working on, which is a combination or a bringing together of those data to produce a search tool, a way of finding, screening, and contacting reviewers. So I've got a mock-up of, well, it's actually a live version of this up here. So you can see we've got a reviewer up the top who's in experimental condensed matter physics. We've been able to find some verified domains where this person has email addresses. We can show their keywords, but most importantly, we can show their review experience and their review workload and combine it with their article publishing history. It's a very comprehensive and I think really exciting way of both suggesting reviewers and screening them. And on top of that, a really efficient way of contacting them. So we've just deployed the first version of this, and we'll be demoing it to people who are interested at the Frankfurt Book Fair this week. So I'd encourage you to come and take a look at that. And with that, that's Publons. Thank you.
Very good. Great job.